Hello and welcome to the Parker Files, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Hot Toys Nebula, MMS 534. This figure is the first version of this character and it's from the movie Avengers Endgame. For the packaging, Hot Toys have done a really nice job continuing the Endgame line and still maintaining individual branding around each character. I really like how they incorporated the Avengers logo and some spacey layering into the image of Nebula. The detail in the artwork is so good that in certain places it actually appears to be textured, but it's just an illusion. The image of Nebula herself looks fantastic. Nebula's character is known for her blank, sinister gaze, and I think the artist's rendition of that look is spot on. In my opinion, the coloring on this box ties into this figure perfectly. The differing tones of blues and purples are on brand for this character, and I love that the outer sides have cutaways that reveal both the Avengers and Ravager logos. The back incorporates more of the galaxy layering we've gotten on all the Endgame line with Nebula color branding, and I really like the look of it. Pulling off the outer box reveals the Ravager symbol on the front. On the back of the box, as always, we get the credits to the cast and crew who bring Nebula to our shelves, and a large faded Avengers logo. Alright, enough about the packaging. Let's open it up and see what's inside. Here we have Nebula out of the box, and I have to say, I'm so glad we finally got this figure. I am a little surprised we didn't get this release from the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 film, which he played a big role in, and where this release and its accessories, or lack thereof, make more sense. But nevertheless, I'm so thankful we got this figure at all because I'm a fan of the character and also a big fan of getting secondary and tertiary characters that fill out a display or a collection. As I said, this release doesn't come with a lot of accessories, which makes one omission even more noticeable, which we'll talk about a bit later in the review. That said, beyond that glaring omission, I can't think of a lot more she could have come with. Looking at Nebula just standing there, she looks amazing. I did attach her holster, but will remove it later for a close-up of the leg material. But without anything else, she still looks complete and captures the essence of the character perfectly. I've been excited for this release since the day it was announced, and I'm so glad that that wait is finally over. The moment I pulled Nebula out of the box, I was thrilled, which doesn't always happen. So, first reactions are high. Starting from the ground up, the boots are the biggest letdown of this figure, and to me, it's a big letdown. I don't understand Hot Toys sometimes, and this is one of those instances where I'm left scratching my head. We didn't get a split cut design, and that lack of ankle articulation combined with the high heels in this particular boot really limits the posability of this figure without its stand, which is usually how I like to display my figures. The only saving grace for me here is how good the boots themselves actually look. They're beautifully sculpted and the details are so realistic, going all the way down to the slight creases where the foot meets the ankle, and the fine details in the lines, buckles, and straps. Moving up, the rest of the body has a Deadpool meets Daredevil vibe, both in design and the materials chosen. Starting with the knee pads, they have a cushiony rubber feel. They have a nice design to them and it stands out really well against the other materials chosen around them. The details on the rest of the legs are perfect for the character, and I really like the way the 5 rings around the left leg contrast against the strapping where the holster sits on the right leg. The detail on these straps and buckles, it's incredible. What's not so great is the material chosen for the main part of the outfit itself. As is the case most of the time with Hot Toys, the question of posability versus movie accuracy comes into play, and while this material looks amazing, it does create concerns with posing. Creases will definitely come into play if you pose this figure in dynamic poses, which limits a figure of a character known for those type of movements. This isn't a big issue for me due to the type of poses I will use due to the lack of ankle articulation mentioned earlier, but it is worth mentioning. Similar to the legs, the material on the upper outfit isn't great for a figure that needs great articulation. The underparts of the figure are done in that textured fabric, which is really going to lead to a lot of creases. The outer vest, though, is made of some sort of pleather, which looks great, and I'm not overly concerned with its durability, as it's not a piece that would be altered by posing. To date, I've not had figures that have degraded over time, so I can't speculate as to whether or not this material would fall under that category for concern. What I do know is that I love the accents used here, like the mixed materials that complete this outfit. The lines are pleasing to the eye and finish off the outfit perfectly. The strapping and buckles on the shoulders are awesome, but I'm sad to say that as good as they look, they can't cover up the issues I have with the shoulder separation on her left arm. The gap from the top of the shoulder and the way it hangs, it just looks a little odd to me. I've seen others who have said that the right arm shoulder looks too big or too puffy, but I don't see that as much as I see the issue I have with the left arm. It just looks like it hangs too low. I think it might be an illusion due to the slope of the shoulder and top of the arm itself, but nevertheless, I just don't like how it looks. Speaking of the arm, however, the detail here is incredible. It's sleek in design, and I think the proportions are on point. The paint app used here accentuates the details and the lines to perfection. And as you get down to the wrist, you start to see some nice detail of red and green wiring that runs into the sculpt of the hands. And even though they're separate pieces, they look seamless. The left arm has a nicely detailed Ravager logo on the upper part of the arm strapping, and the subtle use of gold on it looks great. Moving down, you see a number of different materials used, and they complement one another really well. The fine lines in this upper outfit are subtle, as are the buckles, but they work together to create a perfect silhouette. I'm glad to see and say that Hot Toys addressed some of the body concerns most collectors were quick to point out in the prototype that we saw. Last but not least, I want to point out the belt, which completes the outfit. It can't be taken off, and it sits a little too loose for my liking. However, the detail of it is fantastic, and like other pieces of this outfit, the sculpt, detail, and paintwork are flawless. While I feel this figure as a whole loses points for posability due to the limitations mentioned, the movie accuracy and intricate detail of this figure are second to none. As always, when it comes to Hot Toys, the head sculpt is what gets the praise or causes the biggest commotion in the collecting community, and this sculpt of Karen Gillan as Nebula is flawless. It doesn't matter what angle you look at this from, it's Nebula and it's perfection. Hot Toys does these non-human alien-style sculpts incredibly well, and I can't think of a time where they've missed the mark. The Red Skull, Thanos, Drax, and Yondu quickly come to mind, just to name a few. The paintwork here is executed to perfection in the different tones of blue and purple, and the texture work added to give it life. The eyes are black and sinister, and the metallic gold plate around her eye and up the side of her head is incredibly detailed. The only thing wrong with this sculpt is that we only got one of them. For this to be an accurate release to the endgame film, there really should have given us a second head sculpt with the orange plate over her left eye. I'm glad Hot Toys didn't make that a removable plate, because when you look at this sculpt, to have something removable on it, I think it would have reduced the realism of the sculpt. But I do wish we had gotten the second sculpt with that plate variation. Not having it reduces my overall rating of this release, but not the sculpt in and of itself. To me personally, for a rating, I'd have to give this sculpt a perfect 10 out of 10. In terms of accessories, as I said earlier, Nebula doesn't come with a whole lot, but overall I'm very pleased with what we do get with this release, and I can't think of more she could have come with beyond that second sculpt. First up, we have Nebula in a basic dynamic pose holding her batons and ready for action. Taking a quick look at the lower body, this is the extent to which the articulation in her legs, combined with the lack of articulation at the ankles, allows her to stand on her own. While this pose looks okay, it's not as lifelike as I would like it to be, and I don't like the gaps you see from her feet to where they touch the ground. Those frustrations lead me to believe that on my shelf, the pose for Nebula will sadly be a museum pose. But getting back to the accessories, Nebula's batons look fantastic. We do get one variant of the baton that isn't extended, but we only get one of those, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me as to why. I don't see myself using that variant of this accessory, but these on the other hand look incredible. The detail in the sculpt is great, and the paint app, while simple, does add a realism to them that makes these batons a very usable accessory. Along with the batons, you see two alternate hands here, and the detail on both of them is exceptional. The robotic hands carry the metal plating, and while the paint weathering is realistic, the green and red wires finish them off perfectly. The right hand is equally impressive in its sculpt and paintwork. I love the leather covering and how seamless it appears to the right arm gauntlet. I also appreciate the realism in the paint app on the hands, right down to the purple fingernails. Also shown in this pose is the gun in her holster. My one gripe about this accessory is just getting it attached. The belt has 2 small rings used to feed 2 straps into it to attach the holster. I have big hands, and trying to get this holster attached is more than a nuisance. It took me forever to get it attached, and now that I finally got it on there, it's never coming off. Here we have Nebula in a slight variation of the previous pose, but this time incorporating the energy effects that accentuate the batons. You can see here that while the pose is different, the range or extent of posability is about the same. The energy effects loop onto the batons easily and they just rest in place. They're simple in design and paint application, but they have a nice translucent look to them. I'm not normally a big fan of these style of accessories as they can at times seem too toy-like, and even though I don't see myself using them, I have to say they are better than most that are similar in kind. One other thing to point out in this pose is the shoulder articulation. One thing I notice is my issue of the left shoulder gap isn't as awkward looking in this pose. The gap is still there, but it doesn't look as obvious because the shoulders and arms are in 2 different positions. Getting back to a more basic museum pose, here we have Nebula with my favorite accessory she comes with, her gun. Hot Toys does guns really well in my opinion, but like the non-human head sculpts, their execution of space weapons is off the charts. This weapon is so unique and so full of detail. The sculpt is amazing and the paint app and weathering are exquisite. The graphite style handle, the silver body with gold accents, it's all capped off to perfection with the weathered bone style top piece, and the subtle blue burn marks on the end of the barrel, well, they're icing on this incredible cake of a gun. Out of all the characters in the MCU, Nebula isn't an A-list character by any means, but after watching Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and Endgame, I felt like she was a figure we needed to have on our shelves, and I'm so thankful Hot Toys delivered. Some may take issue with the fact that she isn't really accurate to the Endgame film due to the lack of that orange plate for the head sculpt, and while I agree with that, I am willing to overlook that and the posing limitations I've detailed, because as they say in Endgame, whatever it takes. And if overlooking those 2 gripes is what it takes to get Nebula on my shelf, that's what I'm willing to do. She's just that important of a character, and beyond that and those issues, she just looks phenomenal. The moment I saw the prototype, I had to have her, and I'm so glad she's finally on my shelf now, and I hope it's only a matter of time before her long-lost sister Gamora can join her. But until then, after looking at Nebula and everything she comes with, I'd rate this figure a total 9 out of 10. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you want to stay tuned for more. If so, take a second and hit that subscribe button. There'll be more 6-scale figures and diorama reviews coming your way. Until then, stay safe and collect because you can.